Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Toad TV. I am Mary Beth, and today I get to host another episode of Quilting with the Toads, a pretend quilting show. And my guest is Helen, who is going to be talking to us about English paper piecing. So, what is English paper piecing?
Ingle.
She quilts. She doesn't talk.
Okay, English paper piecing is a hand sewing technique for quilting, making projects. It's the slower making effort. I find it very soothing to hand sew. You might laugh if you've been following us for a while, since we said we'd never do it.
Never!
But what you do is you use paper shapes to stabilize your fabric. You baste your fabric to the shapes. We use glue to baste our fabrics. And then you hand sew your fabrics together.
Along the seam right there.
Along the seams. And what it does is, aside from being the slower making, it gives you shapes that you wouldn't necessarily be able to easily get with machine piecing.
Also, it allows you to really think about what you're doing. It's a very intentional form of quilting because it does take a while. So it allows you to really think about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to use your best fabrics, your best materials, because you're putting a ton of time into this, whatever it's going to be. So you don't want to just, hey, I'm just going to
throw this together.
Use this lousy fabric or whatever.
Okay, so with this, you talked about using the paper inside to stabilize it. You might be able to see that the inside piece doesn't have the paper because she's completely finished this piece. So she took that out. But look how wiggly that is and trying to sew that to something. Whereas when you have the paper, it gives you a little bit of structure, something to hold on to, so that as you're sewing it, these two pieces are standing upright and not kind of going down in the middle as you're trying to sew them
and you
together.
get your straightest seam that way.
Right. Okay, so what kind of fabrics would you use for English paper piecing? You said you're going to use your best fabrics and go and find the best pieces of the fabrics.
And that's, again, a personal preference as to what your best fabrics are. But those fabrics that you've been hoarding and
that have special meaning
to you because, again, you're putting so much time into it. So you can, and you're gonna have different fabrics that you cut for your more general pieces. You'll probably be using non-directional fabrics where you can just cut anywhere in the fabric and it doesn't matter.
You could hold this particular piece going upwards like that, or it could be on like that.
Right.
It doesn't make a difference because there's nothing that says this is the top and this is the bottom.
And also you can be more economical cutting your fabric because it doesn't matter where in the fabric that you cut it. You can cut along the edge and just cut out enough to make sure that it wraps around your piece, whereas if you're doing what we call fussy cutting or focus cutting, you're going to be, it's not an economical way to use fabric because I wanted the Princess of Oz motif from a larger piece of fabric, and I could very likely have to go right into the middle of the fabric and cut this out to get my piece, so I am ruining the area around it to get the one particular piece. But you buy into that as part of English paper piecing. That's what you do. And so
where have we been getting most of our pieces of fabric from for the English paper piecing?
We're using our scraps because we don't throw anything away ever. And for the most part, we've been using our scraps. For my rosemary quilt that I'm working on, I used a fat quarter bundle that I had because I knew that this was going to be a full quilt. It's not going to be so scrappy looking that I wanted the fabrics to go together. So I did a lot of non-directional cutting for the thinner pieces, and my fussy cutting, this is a bad one. This is a good example. My fussy cutting came for the petals here. So you can see the rabbit and the deer.
Okay, so now, with some of our quilts, you may start noticing, oh, I remember a bag in that. Because we have leftovers from bags and things like that we just kept.
And the fabrics mean something to us because you go into it and you're like, oh, I remember that. The Princess of Oz, I mean, that's just a nostalgic thing. My mom loved the Oz books. She had us read them when we were kids. So this is just a very nostalgic seeing that cover of the book. I mean,
Memories.
I'm
Such
not going to
memories.
say that I bought a bolt of fabric because it had that book cover, but maybe I did.
And other really good book covers too,
I
so
had
it
really
wasn't
good book
so
covers
bad.
and-
But
And we made a bolt of fabric's worth of bags out of it,
Right.
and we just have little pieces left so that I get to have the memories of making the bags, the nostalgia of my childhood from the little pieces that are left. I mean, we have little pieces that are just like this, and I'm going in and cutting little bits here and there.
okay, so you said that they're the fussy cutting. Are there different types of fussy cutting?
Yes, and we're just, Meredith and I are just getting into the English paper piecing. So what I have decided to do, because I'm very good at these things. I always follow through.
Always.
I've joined a sew-along for the year. I'm 3 weeks behind. Shocking, I know. But it's being run by Naomi Clark. She's Naomi Alice C on Instagram. And she is running a focus cutting sew-along for the year. And the way it works is each week you make one block. Or one hexie is what it's going to turn into. And she has different themes for each week. So there's a theme for the month. Like the month of January, the theme is the Pantone color of the year. So each of your hexies have to have either gray or yellow in them because those are the Pantone colors for 2021.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the theme for January. And then each week has a different technique that you're going to learn. So the first week was just pretty much you're picking an identifiable motif from the fabric. And what that is this is my first week.
Okay.
So I used, well, first of all, for January, my center hexagon is going to be the yellow polka dots. And then for the techniques, those are going to be my outer half hexies. You'll see in just a sec.
Okay, so actually using this, and since it's a non-directional, you can show
Right.
them how you cut it out from right at the
So what I did was
very edge.
I had this scrap. This is folded in half. So I had this. So I folded it in half again.
Why don't I hold that?
Okay. And then I just went to the edge and I cut out the hexagon right from the edge. So see, as you see, I've used as little of the fabric as possible so that there's all of this fabric is still very much usable.
So now, identifiable motif.
So then for the identifiable motif, I chose this butterfly fabric. And this is the completed hexie. So I went through and I chose the different butterflies to cut out in my half hexie. And I'm going to show you how I did it using a template to cut. So that's the identifiable motif. It's you look at the fabric, you can see exactly what I cut out. And also it's very reminiscent of the particular fabric. I look at this and I know which fabric line I used for it and which piece of fabric it came from.
Okay. All right. So then the second one is
obscure settings.
the second type of fussy cutting.
So the second week we're doing obscure settings. And what that is you take a piece of fabric and you're going to cut something out of it that is not the main focus of the fabric, so that you necessarily wouldn't look at it, the piece that you cut, and say, oh, I know what the fabric line that is, because this is the fabric I chose. So you look at this and you think, oh, look, they're gnomes. They're knitting. That's really cool. And what I did was, from the obscure settings, I took the mushrooms and the flowers in between the gnomes. So you wouldn't know, looking at this, that gnomes were the main part of the fabric that I chose. So that's the obscure settings.
Does she explain why you would go with obscure settings other than the main focus of The fabric?
More that it's a little piece that you can take, you know, like for the particular hexagon that I'm working on, the gnomes are too big. So I'm not going to cut the gnomes. And it's just, you know, hey, I like that flower. And that's going to work perfectly. You know, the gnomes are going to work perfectly for something else. But this particular flower is going to work very well for what I need right now. I want flowers. What a lot of people who are in the So Long did was they used the same motif for all 6 half hexes. So that, like, if I had done that, I would have a ring of flowers going around the yellow hexie.
Okay.
But I used the mushrooms too, just because I didn't have enough fabric to get all 6
Okay.
of my flowers from.
So basically, if you were looking at this fabric and you said, okay, I'm going to use this piece with the gnomes, don't throw away this little piece on the top because you can use it for things that are other...
Like my mushrooms came from pieces like this that we had held on to.
Okay.
So now we know why we don't throw anything away.
All right. So with this, you had said that with the fussy cutting and everything, how exactly do you fussy cut? How do you do that?
So you can do it any number of ways. You can cut out just around and then, you know, if I just cut out the butterfly and then I could just fiddle it around the piece of paper to get it the way I want. Or if you're going for a very particular thing, they have these acrylic templates, which you can use.
Okay, so we've moved over to where we can show you exactly what Helen's going to do.
So I have my template, and the way the template is made is you can hopefully see there's an inner hexagon, and that's what's going to show. The outer piece is my seam allowance, and those are the pieces that I fold over the edge. So that if I have my paper piece, the paper piece fits exactly within the inner half hexie, so that I know whatever I want to cut and be my motif has to fit within this inner piece here. So as you can see here with this butterfly, can you see he's too big because there's no way that I can really get it where I get the whole butterfly. I'm always going to be cutting off a wing. So here, this is the line here. So
you can see it.
Okay, so I'm always going to be losing him. So he wouldn't work. But then when I came to this guy, I can just get him. So then what I do is I hold that there, and I have my handy dandy Frixion pen, which is, I can draw on the fabric, and once I iron, it goes away. So then what I do is I draw the line. So I outline it like that. And then I'll cut along the line there, and then I can wrap it around my paper and know that this is going to be...
Okay, so going back to what Helen was saying about this taking out a piece, whereas it is close to the edge, everything around it, you now have a hole in the middle of your overall line of fabric.
And if I want to use any of this for paper piecing, again, in particular, I can't because there's not enough of a seam allowance around any of these here.
Okay.
So these are pretty much gone, but we've cut him out.
Okay, so there he is.
And then I have my paper piece.
So these paper pieces, you can either get a thing that you download digitally and just print out and you cut out yourself, or there are places online like paperpiecing.com where you can just buy them pre-cut. And you can see
how it fits, the piece fits directly within that inner hexie. So now I have this cut out, and I know that I'm going to be, it's going to attach to the main hexagon this way with the shorter end on top. So I want my butterfly facing
towards the larger end. end. Okay.
So then what I do is I put it on the paper, and you can see when I put the paper down on the back of the fabric, it just covers.
And then you would glue it.
And you either glue it, some people sew, but then you can see when I put it on my paper piece,
He is
smack dab in the center, and he is the focus. And then I sew him to the hexagon, so you can see he is right here.
okay.
So that was the identifiable motifs cutting.
Okay.
And then when I was cutting the obscure motifs, again, I'm using my template, and I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to make sure that I get this flower right in the center of where I want it. I'm going to draw the outline, and look, I'm going to cut these gnomes to shreds, but I don't want the gnomes, I want the flower.
Okay.
So, and then when I was doing the mushrooms, I was using the template, and to begin with, I was going with these two mushrooms here, but there was no way that I could really get them and not have a mushroom
On the side?
on the side there, so I wanted it to be just the mushrooms. So then I just moved the template around until I found it, and I found with these two, there's enough space in between the two on either side that I can just cut these out for my 1-inch half hexie.
Okay, so again, you would trace around the outside of the entire plastic piece, cut it out, knowing that anywhere that's beyond the white line on the inside is going to be folded under.
Right. So I'm going to cut, in cutting, I'm going to cut these two mushrooms out, but they're not part of it. They're just part of the fold over.
Okay.
So that's
All right.
how I did it. So that's my fussy cutting, focus cutting that I've done so far. Week 3 was last week's, and then week 4 is coming out today. So stay tuned.
Yeah, you're not quite 3 weeks behind. You've got the first 2. So
No.
you're
When I started, I was
Yeah.
the 3 weeks had been released. So
you're on your 3rd.
right.
And interesting to find the different ways of, where are you focusing on the fabric? Are you focusing on the main piece in the middle, or are you focusing on a little piece around
Right.
the outside? It's really kind of
Yeah.
cool.
So
All right.
and it's all learning stuff. So we're learning new techniques and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Quilting with the Toads. Stay tuned, because who knows what rabbit hole we're going down next and where we're going to bring you with us.
Right.
Okay. We hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Go forth and quilt.
Fussy cut.
Yeah.
Hand stitch. Try something new. Okay.
We'll see you next week.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.